Kevin. So now, with that said, Leah Cartwright for the record. Now that we're recording and official. So one thing, you know, in thinking about what I wanted to talk about today, and it's a weird time to be in politics, as some of you may be aware. It's tough, and a lot of people want to talk to me. I think I would love to say it's because I have a degree in social work, but I think it's because I work in politics and policy. So a lot of folks have a lot of questions. And so I thought today, and judging by the turnout, we may have a lot of folks with a lot of questions. So I wanted to just start with who I am and what I do. I think I mean, everyone laughed when I said you clapped for a lobbyist, right? But why is that? There's a stigma. There's a definite stigma. I will acknowledge that. There's a stigma of working in politics. There's a stigma of being a politician, making those choices, which, by the way, I have no aspirations to run for office. That is a question I get frequently. I'll make a frequently asked question page. I will not run for office. That is difficult. That is difficult to run for office and then to hold office, to be the person who makes the choice. I know what kind of toothpaste I use now. I have a very particular kind. It's Sensodyne Pro Enamel. It took me about 13 years to settle on the appropriate kind of toothpaste. I am not the person you want pressing the yes or no button. I'm not. I know that about myself. I take a long time. I like to do that research. I like to look into the background and find those details. And I like to give that information to people who care and people who do have that ability to press the red and green button and make that choice. I don't want to make that decision, so I will not run for office. So that's frequently asked question number one. I started by introducing myself as Lea Cartwright here today as myself. That's because at the building, and I'll give you an example. This was just Friday, so 2 days ago, 9 o'clock in the morning, I sat down and I was the only person in opposition to Speaker Yeager's bill at 9 o'clock on a Friday morning. And some of you who are in politics may know that the Speaker of the House, the Assembly, is Steve Yeager. He's in leadership. He's pretty powerful, at least as far as it goes in the state legislature. So you don't typically oppose the Speaker's bills. That's an unwritten rule. There are written rules. If you're interested, I'll send you every written rule you'd like to see. But unwritten rules, you don't typically oppose the Speaker's bill. So at 9 o'clock in the morning, I got up at the dais and I pressed the button. Lea Cartwright, LEACARTWRIGHT, here today on behalf of the Nevada Psychiatric Association in opposition to this bill, and here's why. And you only get 2 minutes to do that, and you have to make an impact in those 2 minutes. So this hour conversation we're going to have, while I can talk that long, is a lifetime for me. And that was me at 9 o'clock in the morning on Friday. I was Lea, Nevada Psychiatric Association. And then immediately following that, I was Lea, American Property Casualty Insurers Association. And then immediately following that, I was Lea Cartwright, here today on behalf of Foster Kinship. And then immediately following that, I was Lea Cartwright, here today on behalf of High Sierra Area Health Education Centers. And then immediately following that, Lea Cartwright, here today on behalf of the Nevada Speech, Hearing, and Language Association. Right, I have 14 different clients that I represent before the legislative body. I am 14 different people at all times at a minimum, which to the doctor in the room, please don't take that the wrong way. I am very safe. We're all very safe. I'm just 14 different people all the time. So it's unusual for me to be able to come before any group and say I'm Lea Cartwright here today as myself. And so I really appreciate you having me here today as myself to share these things. You can find an entire list of who I represent on the legislative website. Lobbyists are required to disclose and register. I know there are some folks who say things like we need to ban lobbying. I don't know how to tell this to folks in any other more gentle way, but that would be your First Amendment right to petition your government. And I don't really want any more people messing with the Constitution. I'm a fan, you know, I like it. I think it's great. I think we should be able to petition our government. There are safeguards around being a paid lobbyist, which I forgot my church badge, but remembered my lobbyist badge. Ta-da. For those of you online, I'll put it a little closer. You can see somewhere. There you go. Lea Cartwright, paid lobbyist. They're required to wear that at all times in the building. There's a little caste system that they've involuntarily made, one of those unintended consequences. All of us with the purple or the blue, this dark blue color, we're the paid lobbyists. So you sometimes will get folks who say, well, watch out for those blue badges. Don't let them in, right? Or, you know, opposite, the nonprofits all have green badges. So, oh, there's the Justice League. Watch out for those green badges. They've got those bleeding hearts. And right, yes, I mean, but I have a blue badge, Lois, right? So, I don't know, I think that goes back to the first time I ever spoke in front of the church, I think, about being an enigma, the bleeding heart with the blue badge. How does that happen? I am happy to talk about bills that are coming before the legislative session, the general vibes of the building, which are off. Folks, I will tell you, it is off in the legislative building. It's hard, I think, to govern when one of those systems that you rely on to govern is crumbling, right? Lucky for us, we live in Nevada, so we are geographically removed. I find comfort in that. We're geographically far away and separated from what's happening in Washington, DC, but we're not out of the woods by any stretch of the imagination. Just on average, 37% of our state budget comes from the federal government. That is our entire state budget.
What percent?
37%. That's on average. So that's across every single agency and division. That is our judicial system and our public defenders and your right to be represented when you are convicted or you're accused, thank you, of a crime. That is our healthcare system, that's Medicaid, right? That's what covers folks who are low income. It covers 50% of every birth in Nevada is covered by Medicaid, 1 in 2. It was 1 in 3 Nevadans were covered by Medicaid until just recently when we started kicking people back off of the Medicaid rolls. We're down to just over 1 in 4, right? Slightly, which is almost back to normal, 25% of our population covered by Medicaid. And a huge portion of our population that's covered by Medicaid are working. Nevada was instrumental in creating a report following the 2017 legislative session that shows the top 20 employers in our state who have 50 or more employees. So that's technically, you're not a small business, you have more than 50 employees who have employees on Medicaid. And the #1 employer in the state, Amazon, has the most employees on Medicaid. So these are folks who are working. Here at the federal level, we need work requirements for Medicaid. People are working. It's not a list of terrible actors. #3 on that list is the state of Nevada, right? And some of that's intentional. The state of Nevada is 3rd on that list for number of employees on Medicaid because they intentionally try and hire folks from the communities they serve in order to bring them into careers and move them through that career ladder. So it's not necessarily that it's a terrible list, except when you combine it with something like tax abatements and rebates that we've given to these companies like Amazon, like Kroger, like Tesla, who all appear on this list of companies with employees on Medicaid. So the state is further subsidizing. Not only have we given tax abatements and rebates to these companies to come here, right, and help us grow and diversify our economy, which is a talking point for everybody, no matter what side of the aisle you're on. But now we are subsidizing the healthcare of the folks that they're here, to employ. Which might be fine if we had a universal healthcare system, but we don't. That's not the system that we have. Instead, we have a state that is further subsidizing business and now potentially having to kick folks off.
Leah,
Yes.
I was really surprised to hear that Tesla has a substantial number. Do we have a percentage of either of their workers that are on Medicaid?
Yes,
I'd like to know that.
so the question that was asked is, do we know the exact percentage for Tesla of the number of employees on Medicaid? One of the benefits to having me be virtual and on Zoom is that I'm at my workstation, my battle station in my office, and I have multiple screens and I can zoom all over the place. And I could immediately look up this report, probably because it's bookmarked on my home computer, and put it in the chat and pull it up and have the data for you immediately.
You have it here, that's fine.
I don't have it here. But the thing is, it exists. It exists. And I think as we go through this, you know, it's very loose. It is a discussion. So as questions come up, feel free to ask. But to go further into this point, there are so many resources in this state. We have data dashboards that our Office of Public Health Information and Analytics creates. That's one of them, is the top employers with employees on Medicaid through OFI, the Office of Public Health Information and Analytics, and epidemiology, I think there's another letter in there. So we have all of those. One of the other things it shows is the number of children placed out of state. So children who are in state custody, who have been either relinquished, you know, parents have given up their right, they've been taken away for some reason. But the number of children who are in state custody but placed out of state for care. These children are placed in Utah, they're placed in Texas, they're placed in Florida, they're placed in Nebraska, they're placed in South Dakota, in New York, occasionally in California. For a long time, the majority of these kids were in Utah, and they came from Clark County, so you can imagine there's no parental or guardian contact and kinship contact. Some of you may be aware that we're under, we being the state of Nevada, a Department of Justice investigation. Has anybody heard? No, okay, so Nevada, a couple years ago, had a complaint filed against them. I don't know how you talk about the whole state, so whatever pronouns the state of Nevada uses. One time I called Nevada a she, and my boss didn't like it, and I found some history from 1800s that also refers to Nevada as a she, so I think Nevada is a lady. But historically speaking, I don't know. Anyway, a couple years ago, there was a complaint submitted against Nevada that we are violating the Olmstead Act. Does anybody need an explanation of the Olmstead Act? Okay, quick primer. I keep all this stuff in my head, so thank you for letting me get it all out. There is, and anybody else who's familiar with this and has more access to information, feel free to jump in. There is a requirement that for the most part, care be provided in the community, right? We no longer, starting from about the 60s, want to warehouse, for lack of a better word, folks with mental illness in these institutional settings. So take them out of institutions, they've got to go somewhere. You're supposed to have community-based care, outpatient, intensive outpatient, hospitalization, partial hospitalization, these various levels of treatment. I don't know how many of you have tried to access mental health care in Nevada lately. We don't have that, and we haven't had that. So Nevada has been placing children who need significant levels of care outside of the state because we cannot provide it for children in state. This is especially true for children who are considered dual diagnosed. That means you have a developmental disability as well as a mental illness or an intellectual disability and mental illness, or some combination of the two. It could also be something like a case that I heard about where a child with hemophilia who is also in a bipolar crisis, we do not have a facility that could take that child safely in the state. So we send these kids all across the country. The Department of Justice came in and decided that is in violation of the rights of these children and their families. We are violating the constitutional rights of these children and their families to be together, to be in their communities, to be close to family, and to receive services in the communities in which they reside. So at this point, we have a ruling that's come out, a consent decree from the Department of Justice that says, Nevada, you have to do the following thing. You have to set up all of these requirements, these mental health services in the state. And so that's where we're at now. We're trying to bring these kids home. There are 179 children placed out of state right now, statewide. So 179 Nevada children. And if you think about that now, 179 out of our entire population of about 3 million people, that's not bad, just, you know. If you think about how much we spend daily for that care, how much we have to spend on the travel, because we do have a requirement in statute that says you, the caseworker, have to physically see this child at least once a month. So now you have to fly the caseworker to New York or to Texas to check in with this child. And there were some changes made, modifications to those requirements during COVID, but really you need to see physically, right? You need to make sure these children are okay. Nevada wasn't doing that either. Further violations, so yes, we need to bring those kids home, but that is one of those reports on the dashboard. So you can see I'm a pretty good lobbyist. I'll just keep going down these rabbit holes and talk to you forever. There are some questions online, so let me get to those really quick. The first one from Michelle. On February 27th, AJR 9 was introduced, which urges Congress to enact legislation to prohibit officers and agents of the United States Immigration and Customs Enforcement in the United States Department of Homeland Security from entering schools and places of worship for the purposes of enforcing federal immigration laws. The primary sponsor is the Assembly Committee on Legislative Operations and Elections. Does this mean that everyone on the committee supports AJR 9? What's the likelihood this will come to a vote? Great question, Michelle. So there is, and this is where sometimes I was surprised, the media can be confusing about these topics. There was also a bill heard already in the Assembly Committee on Education to prohibit ICE agents from entering schools without a warrant. So the legislature tackles these subjects from different angles. It's not just one bill. AJR 9 is going to fix everything. AJR 9, which stands for Assembly Joint Resolution, slightly different than the bill. I'm going to continue to call it a bill. Slightly different, keep that in mind. AJR 9 was introduced by this committee. Does that mean the entire committee supports it? Not necessarily. You can vote yes to introduce a bill coming from a BDR to a bill form. That just means you agree that the bill should be introduced. It doesn't mean you have any thoughts on the bill. It just means we now get to see the language. So now we can see this AJR, this joint resolution. It will come up for a hearing. You know, we will likely see similar conversations to the one we saw for the ICE hearing for schools. It's a pretty bipartisan issue here in Nevada. That's one of the other things I love is we are purple. We are so purple, and our, you know, even our most conservative folks. Does anybody know the horseshoe theory of politics? Anybody heard that one? The horseshoe theory of politics, there's more to it, of course, but at some point you get so conservative or so liberal that you end up at the same place. And I see that every day, every single day. And I'll give you a great example. A couple of years back, this bill has already passed, so it's not anything new. Then Assemblyman, now Senator Ira Hansen. Is anybody familiar with that name?
Yeah.
Okay. Ira Hansen, he is as conservative as, you know, the nods and groans in the room make you think. He co-sponsored a piece of legislation with Senator Heidi Swank, one of the most liberal and progressive people in the state legislature. And they found common ground, beautiful theme, common ground on the idea of you should not charge people exorbitant interest rates on payday loans, right? Because for Ira Hansen, a devout Latter-day Saint, this idea of usury, of interest rate, especially when you're so poor that you're getting a payday loan, was terrible for him. So he co-sponsored legislation with the progressive groups who also think payday loans are terrible. So yeah, we have a very, I think, bipartisan government, even when folks are very conservative. There's always common ground. There's always common ground. And I mean, I don't want to point fingers here in our group, but I do occasionally hear folks say, well, they're Republican or they're conservative. And yeah, great. They're also our neighbor. Every single one of those folks in that building are our neighbors, and they represent all of us here in Nevada. The liberals, the conservatives, the libertarians, they're all people. They have families that, you know, they want to see succeed in Nevada. I love it. I love it, and I think it's, you know, the world is not black and white. And as some of you have learned, have a hard time with labels. I don't like them. I don't put myself in any political party. I don't put myself in any gender party. I have a party. I'm a blast, I'll tell you. But I think the labels are silly. We are neighbors. We are humans. We're in this together. And things are great when we work together. There's another question here or comment. This is from Penny. I know you work with the Nevada legislature, but do you have any suggestions for getting US senators to stand up for the role of Congress and fight against illegal activity by the executive branch? I get so angry, I don't think I am very effective. Hang on a second, I get so angry, I don't think I'm very effective. Penny, I know that's not the part of your comment you wanted me to focus on. But it's important, right? I get so angry. So how can you be effective when you're angry? Penny, I don't know what you're doing. You know, that you're feeling this anger. For, I don't know, 3 weeks after Trump was elected, I called Congressman Amadei's office every morning at 6 a.m. because I'm up here in Carson City and it's Washington DC, so it's 9 a.m. So it's, I mean, it sounds early here, but it's, yeah. And I would, I'd get through and I talk to Max every day and ask him how things are going because, like you folks, my family knows I work in politics. So when things are going wrong, I get all of those calls. Please fix it. And so I get my 14 clients, I get my grandma calling me concerned about her social security, you know, the VA benefits, student loan issues, funding for my brother's career in technical education, you know, if it touches government in any way, and there's a problem, I will get that phone call. So Penny, what would make you feel effective? And I think that's something we all need to think about as individuals, whether that's calling Congressman Amodei at 6 a.m. because you're awake and you get through, you know, at 6 a.m. And you can chat with Max, there's 2 of them. I recommend it. But what else can we do, right? And I think it's moments like this where we come together and we see this beautiful community of Northern Nevadans that we all, you know, share our passion for a better tomorrow at 9 o'clock on a Sunday morning. That's one thing, right? For me, it's starting a garden, making sure that I'm growing food, that I can see quite literally that the time for flowers will come again. That I can plant those seeds, those literal seeds, not just my metaphorical policy seeds, but the literal seeds, so I can see that things will grow. That this is not, this is temporary, right? And we all have to remember that, and it's okay to be angry, and that cannot be our only motivator. I have a question in the back.
Are you gonna have a chance to go over the pending legislation that's gonna be coming out?
In the Nevada State Legislature?
Yeah.
Do you have anything specific you want to talk about?
No, I just
Okay.
was hoping to hear what.
More specifics? Yeah,
I've got a specific one.
you've got a specific.
Medical aid dying that has been
Medical
heard in
aid.
the last few legislative sessions.
Yes.
I would love to know what you're hearing as to if it's gonna come up again or not.
Okay. All right, anybody else specific legislation or want to know more about legislation? I'll just write it down and get through.
And housing.
Housing, anything specific to housing? Access to
Yes.
housing?
Definitely.
Okay, anything else? Go ahead.
Data centers.
Data centers. Okay, and online, I can see the chat, so feel free to pop it in the chat. I think I can hear you if you say it out loud, so that's another option. If you have something specific you want me to go over from the Nevada legislature, we're at 9:30 now, so it's a good time. I ranted for 30 minutes, that's so fun. Wow, okay, other topics from the legislature folks want to know more about. Okay, so I've got medical aid and dying, housing, data centers,
Voting integrity for Nevada.
voting integrity. Okay, All right, so let's go down the list. Medical aid in dying. This has come up every session since I started in 2015. It's also called physician-assisted suicide, euthanasia, voluntary, medical aid in dying, MAID. Yes, there will be another bill that will come up.
So it's still.
Yes, it will get a
I
hearing.
I thought so, but I
Yep.
haven't heard anything lately.
Yep, the bill will come up, the bill will get a hearing likely in both houses, well, in the Assembly and in the Senate. If it gets out of the legislature, which is doubtful, right? And it's not that it's a party issue, it's not a Republican Democrat issue, this is a very personal individual issue for a lot of legislators. It will not break down, the votes will not break down along party lines. Even if it gets through the legislature, it will be vetoed by the governor.
Yeah.
And sometimes I speak really bluntly about legislation. I'm pretty blunt with my clients. Seems to have served me well. I have 14 of them, so I'm gonna continue that path. It will be vetoed by the governor. He's Catholic. I mean, sometimes it comes down to it is as simple as that. The next one, housing access. Several bills have come up relating to housing access. There's actually one that's getting a work session this week, which is early in the session for a work session. This is Senator Vignate's bill. I don't have the exact number on me right now, but this one creates a pilot program to help lower interest rates and help pay, for those of you who haven't bought a house in a while, I'm in the process right now of buying one. It's uninhabitable, but it's affordable. And that's how you buy a house as a millennial. But there's this bill up for work session this week that creates a pilot program to help pay that gap, right? What is it? It starts with a P. I haven't bought a house, so I don't know all of these words. And anyway, there's like a gap insurance that you have to pay, PMI.
Yes, like.
Thank you. There it is, PMI. So that way, these folks who are first-time home buyers don't have to pay as high of a rate. It's either your total mortgage or your interest rate gets slightly lowered if you don't have to pay this PMI. So Senator Vignate's bill addresses that.
Is that federal money?
This would be state money. This would be state money. Yeah, so it does have a fiscal note. You know, the policy is great. It's gonna go hang out in the Senate Finance Committee. The leadership bill, so it could get appropriated some funds and get through. Not likely to get vetoed if it does get through, which is great. There are other bills to address housing, things like prohibiting localities from banning accessory dwelling units, ADUs. So there's, you know, counties and cities, these localities that say things like, yes, you can put a mother-in-law cabin or a casita, or, you know, they don't want you to put a mobile home or a trailer. Can't have that, but you could have a casita or a tiny home, you know. But there are bills that do things like that. There are other bills that want to increase the availability of supported living. So for folks, especially folks with serious mental illness or developmental disabilities, to make sure that they have access to at least an apartment where then someone could come in and make sure, did you take your meds? You know, are you running low? Do you need to go to the grocery store? Just to make sure that folks are safe and supported. So there are many ways that they're trying to tackle housing in the legislature, which I think is pretty cool. On data centers, the one bill that is up right now, closest to having a hearing, would require an audit of the data centers in Story County. So that, you know, checking to make sure that they are complying with their tax abatement agreement that they've gotten. Are they actually contributing to the economy? When I look at this, you know, I'm not an economist. I don't know if there's any in the room, but when I look at your direct and indirect economic impact, and you tell me that we're gonna have a $3.5 billion indirect economic impact, I wanna see your math. Like, I wanna see your numbers. Those are a little fuzzy to me. Please explain indirect economic impact and show me how we're gonna track that. I don't believe you. So they're gonna do an audit. They also wanna look at, you know, how did the addition of these data centers impact the region? Things like infrastructure, our sewer, water, schools, police, fire, electricity, right? Are we actually providing all of the services in the right way through the right funding mechanism? You know, there have been some attempts to require that Story County pays Washoe County for the impact that those data centers have had on this area, right? On the schools, on housing, on fire and police access, you know, on our healthcare systems. Should they pay their, should they pay for the roads? Should they pay for a train or a bus, right? There's, so yes, several things on data centers are coming. Voting integrity. So, again, one of those phrases that I think can be a lot for folks. I would argue that Nevada has we have a great voting system. I think one of the things we may see is a movement toward, and what Speaker Yeager has proposed is adding more drop boxes so that we can count more ballots on election day. So we're not waiting 4 to 7 days after election day to count all of the ballots. That's one of the voting rights issues that I think is, bipartisan, that we could get closer to compromise on, and, you know, making sure all of these ballots are counted by election day. That's an easy one for both sides to agree on. When we start looking at things like mandatory voter ID, mandatory in-person signature, some of these other things that folks want to take away, like getting rid of mail balloting, that's not going anywhere.
Right.
Ballot harvesting, some of you may have heard that term. So Nevada now does allow a third party, or, you know, your neighbor. My grandma is blind, so she calls me, right? And can you come take me to deliver my ballot, right? Technically ballot harvesting, picking up and putting them somewhere else. Do the folks who do ballot harvesting, who do ballot collection, need to register with the Secretary of State? Do they, should they be limited in the number of ballots that they can do that? Do they need to sign an affidavit? Like what kind of parameters and guidelines, if any, should be put around these folks who are assisting others in getting their ballots dropped off? I think you're all aware that the Nevada legislature is, majority Democrat, meaning all of the chairs of the committees are Democrats. The chair of a committee is a very powerful position. If you go online and you look at all of the bills that have been introduced, you could give yourself a heart attack, right? There are bills that are they sound scary. They're scary. They will not get a hearing. It will be put in the drawer by the chair and never see the light of day. So if you get a link from somebody who, you know, sends you SB 111 and you see this bill that's banning trans athletes at the state level and mandating that we only have 2 genders and that these kids have to have their genitals inspected before they can play sports, right? That bill will never get a hearing. It will never see the light of day. But that legislator was duly elected, and they are able to request 10 pieces of legislation. That is their duty and their right. We as the public get to see that legislation. And then the chair of the committee gets to decide what to do with it. So try not to worry too much. There is something else in here. What is the data center bill number, please? Hi, Robin. This is Lea. As I mentioned earlier, if I was at my battle station computer with my dual monitors, I could whip those numbers up in a jiffy. It's not off the top of my head, but just go on Nellis PLT and you can search around, or I will follow up later. I think everyone has my email or knows how to find me. If not, I will be in the stairwells, likely, of the Nevada Legislative Building at all times. It is 9:40. Great. Other questions that folks what are you curious about?
2 items. One sounds minor, but it is a biannual or a semi-annual frustration. The clocks issue. And the other is, I understand there's a move to do what Oregon has done in terms of under medical, can't think of the word,
Psilocybin,
they're looking, pardon?
mushrooms,
Yes, psilocybin.
there it is. I'm glad.
Supervision.
Yes, so that is coming too. So you're curious about, the clocks issue? So there's a colloquially known as lock the clocks. Hopefully I said that right. And then the psilocybin access. Are those the two? Okay, so, standard time versus daylight savings time. The bill was heard. I don't have the number for you. But it was Assemblywoman LaRue Hatch. She actually represents the district that includes the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship, so yay, her. She presented a bill earlier this week, or I guess last week, that would lock Nevada's clocks at the current time, at standard time. That is allowed. I just recently learned, because I get to learn every day in this job, that we would have to lock them on standard time. It is against federal law to lock it on daylight savings time. So if we are going to have just one time, if we're going to lock it in place, we have to do it standard time. It did get a hearing. I will tell you, this bill, I swear to you, has been heard and passed 3 times, I swear, in my head, and we have never changed the clocks in Nevada. I know it has to do with there's certain triggers, if California does it, and several other states, and the feds give us permission, then we can do it. I don't quite understand the federal interplay. It has passed before. We're gonna try it again, you know, because of the emphasis, the current emphasis on states' rights. This could be the session.
Idaho does it.
Yes, Idaho does do it, and so does Arizona. Yes, yes, yeah, so.
Stop screwing with nature, you know?
Yeah, so here's one thing. Nevada has several laws on the books that are trigger or reciprocal or that go into effect only if other states do something, right? The daylight savings time issue was one of those and has been in the past. I think the current bill this session fixes that. We aren't reliant on other states doing it. There's shipping concerns involved. This session might be the one. Psilocybin, yes, that bill's coming back. Yes, it will likely pass. It will only be a pilot program. I guess this is a crystal ball. I'm saying this with such certainty. So please remember, anything could change, but here is, you know, my kind of 10-year perspective. The bill is coming. The bill will say this program, you know, allows UNLV to study this. It only applies to veterans and police and fire, or maybe just for police. Veterans and police officers who are retired, who were injured in the line of duty, so like medically retired and have PTSD as a result. So those are the folks who will be able to access medical psilocybin through that pilot program. They will likely, I see some furrowed eyebrows, they will likely start broader in that bill, you know, like with a full pilot study for anybody over the age of 18 with PTSD. The governor, you know, again, comes from law enforcement in Las Vegas. All drugs are bad, that's a black and white issue for him. In order for him to sign some kind of psilocybin program, they will have to compromise, and that compromise will likely be just medically discharged, you know, veterans with PTSD. That is who we will focus this study on. There's another question in the chat, and then I think I saw a hand, 2 hands in the room. Kurt Karst. Kurt says, I saw AB 208, which would prevent governmental entities such as Medicaid from using medications for purposes other than those approved by the FDA and included on the label. I was concerned because I know that there are proven benefits for which the manufacturer did not seek separate approval for due to no financial benefit. Then I saw the opposition letter from the Nevada Psychiatric Association, which Lea submitted. Yay, Lea. This is what a lobbyist does. Thank you, Kurt. Yeah, that is what I do. AB 208 is a very weird bill. I have a copy. I'll pass it around because it makes, I mean, who's a lawyer in this room? Do we have any? Former, retired, any lawyers, lawyer adjacent? No one. Great. Thank goodness. Oh, we do? Okay.
But she's a good lawyer.
Oh, that, a good lawyer. Okay, well, don't mind my note on there, update voicemail. But this is AB 208. This is the bill Kurt's talking about. It's, 3 whole pages. It's huge. It started over here. There you go. It's a very confusing bill. It's a very lawyerly bill. It's the ACLU's attempt to stop the death penalty in Nevada.
Oh, again, yeah.
So the bill is written in a very broad and confusing manner. It says, if you are a governmental entity, and it defines governmental entity as you receive 50% or more of your funding from the government in either direct funding or through grants, then you can't use any FDA approved substance or device for any purpose other than what the FDA approved it for. Okay, very broad. It exists in like chapter 297. I don't usually hang out in NRS 297, so this bill was weird. So this is a way to stop the death penalty without stopping the death penalty, or without saying that you're stopping the death penalty. And this is a great example of unintended consequences. This bill, and I know we have a doctor in the room, this bill unintentionally restricts the use of off-label prescribing if you receive any money, if you receive 50% of your funds from Medicaid. And as we mentioned at the top of the hour, 50% of the births in the state are on Medicaid. 1 in 3 to 1 in 4 people in the state is covered by Medicaid. So this would severely limit the off-label prescribing. And I do represent the Psychiatric Association. In my letter and in my opposition testimony, the example I gave was using propranolol, which is a blood pressure medication, off-label for anxiety. Several of my psychiatrists texted me other examples, but that was the only one that really made sense to me to use in that moment. And that is what happened on Friday. That's the speaker's bill that I did oppose that morning. So lots of fun.
Oh, I was just curious about open primaries. I came from Texas, I'm independent. And we had open primaries there, so I was kind of surprised.
Not to have them here.
Not to have them here.
Yeah, our parties are still pretty ingrained here until there's a vote of the people to change that. We will continue to have our current system. Yeah, go ahead.
I know Tuesday was behavioral health day, and I had hoped to go there, but I wasn't able to, just for the, as a client at Hopes and et cetera. And, just to hang out all day and see what's going on and the people that I know that we're gonna be there speaking and all. Can you speak on that anymore about what is up in the legislature? I don't really know. That's why I wanted to go educate myself.
Yeah.
And I wasn't able to do that.
Yeah, that's a great question. So, I don't know if everyone heard that, but what was mentioned is that on Tuesday, there was Behavioral Health Day at the legislature. And hi, I'm sitting at the computer now. I'm gonna open up a tab here. And I will share this, folks, on Zoom. Give me 1 second. Okay, so, when you mentioned that it was the day at the legislature, come here, please. There we go. What that means, so here's the Nevada Legislative website, folks on Zoom, I think you can see now. What you're gonna wanna look at, and I know it's confusing because you'll see up at the top here where it says view events, not that one. It's this one at the bottom that says events calendar.
Okay.
Dun, dun, dun. Okay, so we click events calendar, view events calendar. So this is March 2025. You can see on the side here. They just revamped the website, so I'm pretty excited about this. You can see this is like a locations. Today is the 2nd of March, so tomorrow is Monday, March 3rd, and it is Reducing the Burden of Cancer Day at the legislature, so legislators and guests are invited to that one. 4-H Capital Days, that one is invitation only, general public, so if you wanted to come tomorrow, in the front of the building, there will be displays on 4-H. I wanted to just show you what was coming up, because And disabilities luncheon. This is like the social calendar of the legislature. You know, as you click through here, let's look at tomorrow. So another one for the general public gambling or public problem gambling awareness day at the legislature. Every legislature has a theme. Every day there's a new group that comes in or a different group that comes in. It's only nonprofits. So like a lobbyist, myself, a public or a private business can't schedule a day at the legislature like this. It's just for nonprofits. The university has one. Last week there on Tuesday was the Behavioral Health Association of Nevada Day. These are educational days. They're grassroots days where you'll see folks just come to educate the legislature. There's 1,200 bills typically that come before the body on a range of subjects. And this is one way that groups who do not hire a lobbyist, or maybe they do hire a lobbyist, try and educate these committees on topics, right? So let's see what's one. I like to go through these because there's folks that I don't know, right?
Are they having grassroots lobby days?
Oh yeah, grassroots lobby day, I think is in May.
Women's lobby?
Yes.
April.
April? Thanks, Nancy Ann.
April 6 or 7.
Okay, yeah, if you need the Nevada Women's Lobby, I'm like tangentially related. I'm giving you guys some staff, that's what I'm doing.
She's very good.
Oh, I love her. Okay, so March 26th, you can see that's a big day. It's Raiders Day at the legislature, so if you want to meet the Raiders, you can. Last night, or what, Friday, I met a basketball player, I forget his name, but he was really cool. He's very nice. He was there for a stuttering bill. I don't follow sports, so I can't tell you who he is or why he's important. He played for the Hornets. See, I don't know. Or the Mavericks, it's just something. He was a basketball player. There were like documentary crews following him around. But yeah, there's always something going on at the building. You know, especially if you're retired, you don't have a lot going on. Come hang out because like who doesn't want to go to Bleeding Disorders Awareness Day? Maybe I should read them before I read them out loud. Nevada Culture Day, Tech Day. Oh wait, I saw Grassroots. Grassroots Girls Day. Look at that. That one's April 3rd. So Grassroots Girls Day, if anybody wants to come down.
Couple of days after that.
Couple days after that, okay, let's see. So they revamped the website, but it's still not 100% user friendly. Hold on, now we'll go to April. Family Medicine Day. I'm saying that you're an infectious disease. UNR School of Public Health, Latino Lobbyist. Oops. Oh wait, what was that one? That one looked cool. Tartan Day. What?
You've gone down a rabbit hole.
Thank you. I'll get back up. Let me stop sharing. I do appreciate that. Yes.
I do the same thing all the time.
Please enjoy the events calendar. One of my favorite days is the ranching day at the legislature where they bring in a fake cow that has like kind of real feeling udders and you can practice milking. There's a lot of people, like 2/3 of our legislature is from Las Vegas. They've never milked a cow. It's so fun. So yeah, I enjoy the building. I like sharing, you know, I forget Northern Nevada has a culture, right? I have a culture. I am from Stagecoach, Nevada. I am rural AF, like I'm super rural. My staff once saw me hop my fence because there was somebody in my neighbor's yard and I just had to bolt from my yard and hop the fence real quick. I'm pretty rural. So when I talk with folks from Las Vegas who, you know, they don't hop fences for fun. It's a culture shock. Oh, we're at 9:54. Other questions about the legislature since I took so long on our events calendar.
You mentioned, and it was interesting, you mentioned when children have two things going on, we don't have facilities to take care of them. I wanna change that to adults that
Yes.
I find are homeless, houseless,
Yeah.
and anyway, have the same issues, but are still allowed on the streets.
Mhm.
And is anything being done about that?
So about homelessness in general, but specifically adult homelessness.
And those with mental issues.
Yeah, I think that, that ties back to several of the things we talked about earlier, with housing, with the budget, with Medicaid cuts. Our current governor is not necessarily a believer in the Housing First initiatives, which previous legislators have tried to pass. The Housing First initiative says that if you get somebody housed, sheltered, then you can treat them, you can get them stabilized, especially if they have mental illness. There have been attempts in the past to push for things like those tiny houses, the ADUs, things like Hope Springs down at Hope's, where they have the little communities where folks can live and get stable. There are folks working to increase those kinds of facilities. And then we have the governor saying we need instead to build more forensic facilities. We need more locked units. He really wants to put, not that he wants to, I'm putting words in his mouth. The governor is from law enforcement. Our jails in Nevada are the largest provider of mental health care in the state. They provide 50% or more of our services for mental health care in the state. So the governor sees this mental health criminal justice issue as a majority criminal justice issue. And his solution is to increase the number of forensic beds. And forensic beds means those that are locked. You're not in jail, right? You're not in prison, but you are in a locked facility because you have mental health issues that have led to you being involved with the criminal justice system. So he wants to see more of that, which ironically, AB 208 is the bill that would limit the types of treatment that could be provided even in those forensic facilities, which if you're the ACLU, you might want. You don't want, and this is a discussion I've had with the ACLU on involuntary or forced medication administration, especially if you have been declared incompetent or found not fit for trial. You are then given medication regardless of your desire to take that medication. And at what point is that not okay, right? At what point do we mandate consent from someone, even if they are locked in the facility? We are at 9:58. You're welcome. We have 2 more minutes. Yes, one for
I
you.
just wanted to tell you, from my perspective, how much I appreciate your perspective
Thanks.
about being really open and listening to all sides without prejudgment and trying to understand their point of view. You are a good example to some of us, which include myself, who tend to go down different rabbit holes. And I just wanted to thank you for serving as that example that it's actually possible.
Here. Oh, no. We'll have to open that other door so I can get my ego. I got Bob and then we'll come right over here. Go ahead, Bob.
Republicans keep coming up with newer and newer ways to restrict voting. There's been some discussion of what happened in the last election in 2024 about the ability of people to challenge people on voter rolls, like 5,000 at a time. And wind up really restricting the number of people who can vote. Now, our Secretary of State is in charge of our voter rolls. Are there any efforts like that going on in Nevada? And if so, what's being done to stop it?
So yes, and there are many bills and you can find them online. Just go on to, pledge.state.nv.us. Click on the 2025 legislative session, the 83rd of St. Nellis. Go to the bill page and type in voting or elections, and do a search and you can read all of the bills that have been proposed. And remember earlier when I talked about everybody who's been elected gets to pick the legislation they want written. And the folks will draft it. Our Legislative Council Bureau, they are nonpartisan. They draft those bills. The only time they don't draft them is if they are unconstitutional. And even then, they will draft them as long as leadership says, yeah, we realize it's unconstitutional, please draft it regardless. So remember, the language will be drafted. It will be out there. The chair of these committees. And in this case, the voting, election, all of these things, those go to the committee on legislative operations and elections. Those committees are both held at about 4 o'clock in the afternoon, Tuesdays and Thursdays on both the Assembly and Senate side. The chairs of those committees will never, ever put those bills on an agenda for a hearing in Nevada.
Well, with that, Leah, thank you very
you.
much.
Candidate, and I have 3 or 4 topics now that happen all the time. So should I call just once and give her my 4 areas of concern? Or should I?
Please help put the chairs away.
You, so, you know, give all of your comments and concerns when you call. And then the next time you call, you keep your list, right, and write it down. You follow up with what you wrote, with what you talked about last time. You add your new concerns and you're very friendly about it. Like you're checking in with an old friend. Hey, this is my conversation. Hey, Max, it's Leah again. I'm just calling to check in. As you might remember, my grandparents were really worried about their social security, especially with everything going on with Doge. I just want to make sure that their information, their assets are secure and their aides. While I'm here, you know, I just heard what happened yesterday with everything between Zelensky and government. It's really supporting Ukraine. That's important to me. You know, I want to know what my congressman's positions are. If you follow up with me on the social security aspect and also the Doge aspect and where the congressman stands on Ukraine, I would really appreciate that. Right? And you just every day follow up and you build on your list every day.
So, what about calling, like in Nevada, we have 2 senators, Democrat. So, same issues or I want to not moving.
Hi, everyone online. Let me just, I know, Penny, we can't do closed captioning. I will talk with Philip again. I think it's the owl that we use. And thank you everyone for joining. I'm gonna have to turn it off here and stop recording.